Welcome to the closing of this year's annual Gobeshona Global Conference. This is the 5th year in our series as we've gone global. I'm delighted to welcome you all from the evening here in Dhaka, Bangladesh. And good morning, good afternoon for wherever you might be joining us, as many of our panelists are joining from various time zones themselves. So as I mentioned, this is the 5th year that we've been going in this global conference series. And today we're speaking here with a rather innovation that our Gobeshona series has kicked off with, which is a hybrid running not only on the virtual Zoom platforms, but also having a physical presence in a room. So you might notice that I'm in front of a very large hall room where there are a number of participants, which we would be gracious enough to have in our sessions here throughout the day, helping us throughout our conference and supporting us through the initiatives that we've gone through, and also being able to do some of our research and capacity building work. So this is one of the areas that we hope that we are able to continue as we carry on with the Gobeshona series looking forward. What are some of the newer ways that we might be able to engage with people, engage with partners across the various different sectors across the globe, and learn from each other by doing activities together in shared platforms such as this, which are not only just a virtual Zoom call anymore, but also being able to connect and network with each other. So I'm reminded by the fact that many of our participants this year have joined us in this journey with us, just as a new participant joining this year for the first time. So I'd like to take a little moment to recall our founder and director, Dr. Salimul Haq, as he started off the Gobeshona series about 10 years ago, which was a physical conference series that we started off here in Dhaka, Bangladesh, where we would have researchers, practitioners from the globe coming in to understand about research and improving the quality of research based here in Dhaka, Bangladesh. But then over the pandemic, having grown that into a global platform where physical conferences were not possible, and then maintaining that as a global presence, as a platform that we've been able to have working across the various geographies and time zones, being able to learn and share with a number of different partners, which would be very difficult if we remained only as a physical setup. So with that being said, just to give us a reminder and a recap of how we started this journey, we'd like to have a few remarks from Dr. Haq as a recording. If we could have the video clip, please.
What is Gobeshona? Gobeshona is a consortium of now 25 organizations. You can see the logos up on the screen, which consists of a set of national and international research institutions, public and private universities, NGOs, private sector who do research work. It's open to anybody, any institution that does research on climate change to join. And over the last couple of years, we have had, as I said, around 25 member institutions. It has three major objectives. The first one is to improve the quality of research being done in Bangladesh, particularly focusing on climate change research, focusing on capacity building for young researchers. The second objective of Gobeshona is to share knowledge and experience, particularly research findings with the research community itself, which is a sizable community in the many hundreds, if not thousands of researchers, faculty members in universities, researchers working in various other organizations.
So usually it's a very uncontroversial track of the negotiations. But unusually, just before the Paris negotiations, the 21st Conference of Parties in Paris in 2015, it became slightly controversial. And the reason for the controversy was the fact that all the capacity building that was being done until then was being done primarily by developed countries, funding consultants from developed countries to fly into developing countries for a few days, run a few work, and tick the box on capacity building. And in the developing countries, particularly the least developed countries, there was a very strong feeling that this was not enough. We need to be investing in long-term capacity at the national level, and this fly-in, fly-out, consultant-driven exercise was not enough and not sufficient. And in fact, one of the research institutions, ODI, tracked the numbers of how much money has been spent on this, and it's in the region of $300 million has been spent on so-called capacity building, spent on consultants from developed countries to come into developing countries and run workshops.
So, delegates, I'd like to leave you with one closing message, a last word. I was asked to think of what my last word would be, and my last word is the word Gobeshona. It is a Bangla word in my language. It means research, but it also is the name of an alliance of local level adapters, not just in Bangladesh, but in many other developing countries, and indeed in developed countries which are also suffering the impacts of climate change. It's an alliance, it's a network, and I would invite you to learn the word and to get to know more about it.
Thank you. So that is really, in essence, what we've been trying to create with the Gobeshona series as we started that many years ago. And as I keep highlighting that there are a number of ways that we've been trying to break those silos, break those paradigms. So one element was trying to bridge the gaps between geographies and sectors. So going global allows us to do that with multiple time zones and multiple activities that we can run in parallel. So again, this year, for those of you that have been following us for the conference, as well as the last few years, would know that we run 24/7 throughout the week over all the time zones. Sometimes parallel sessions are happening up to about 4 at the same time. So we're really able to really bring in quite a diversity of voices, quite a diversity of experiences. And one of the essences that we try to focus on, as we have done always through the Gobeshona series, is not to only hear from the project personnel, people like ourselves that have been funded to go and do a project, or hear about from funders themselves, but really hear from the local experiences, really hear from people in the communities that are working with us on our research, on our activities, on our practitioner-based projects, and really hear from their experiences as an individual, as a community member, as a climate-affected champion, taking the fight forward, doing the adaptations in a hard-fought battle, and hear from them what are the ways that they are gaining any impact, whether there are any benefits coming through, or where are the challenges, and what should we as a community at large, a society at large, really try to focus and try to learn from them on areas that we could do better, we could collaborate better. So that collaboration was very much at the forefront of what we started off with when we kicked off with the Gobeshona series. And I'm proud to say that even this year, with a lot of the constraints and the challenges that we had in setting up the conference having to be postponed for a number of various reasons, we're grateful for all the partners that gave us their support, that gave us their time, that led us with their knowledge and their experiences, as well as trying with a little bit of innovations. So again, part of the ways of breaking that paradigm of capacity building of large that has become the norm in many, many senses over the pandemic is to just do Zoom sessions where presentations will happen, and we will just hear from a number of speakers and then we back out. But really trying to break that paradigm by having experiences from people, having more breakouts, having more sessions, and a hybrid, as I mentioned, as I'm standing here in the room hosting the session both as well as online, and trying to be a bit more innovative and creative with the ways that we can break the old paradigms of having to fly people in and fly people out for limited amounts of time with very little engagements, but really embed that type of partnership, embed the learnings and the lessons, and really allow people to be able to connect and work on the issues together and unpack the knowledge that we are disseminating throughout these very critical works from our partners as well. So with that being said, I'd like to now hand over to my colleague, Shoail bin Saifullah, who has been the Gobeshona conference coordinator for this year, just to give us a recap of some of the things that we've been doing this week, some of the early metrics that we've been able to gain in the impact that we've had this year. Shoail, would you like to go?
Hi, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. I'm Sohail. I've been coordinating the Gobeshona conference this year. Before that, I'd like to start off with a big round of appreciation and as well as thank yous to my team who have made this entire conference possible. We do realize that whilst it's just hosting sessions online, but also hosting partners, focals, and as well as panelists online, it takes a huge amount of human resource and a huge amount of stress on the team itself and the organization itself so that we can bring all of this together. And from there on, we're going to be talking about what have we achieved in the past 5 days that we have run, and as well as what sort of groundbreaking or might I say experimental situations that we have done to make this Gobeshona a little more different, a little more evolving, a little more advancing than the previous one. Next slide, please. So from the get-go, if we see that we have sold over 870 tickets for this conference itself and have achieved 4,020 views in the entire time that we've launched the program to the conference itself until now. For a bit of an understanding, and as well as to echo what Dr. Hawk mentioned regarding flying in and flying out and carbon emissions, imagine there are 10 people in your room right now. It's going to be quite a lot of people. It's going to be a lot of gathering, a lot of crowd. Now imagine 870 people in that same space as well. That is quite unfathomable. This is something that we can achieve by going online and being able to reach out to multiple partners as well. And to say that we have achieved 870 active participation in the span of 2 to 3 weeks is something that is not beyond a miracle. And as well as having 4,020 people see what we are trying to do, see what we are trying to achieve, is the ethos through which Dr. Hawk mentioned about why Gobeshona platform exists in the first place. Next slide, please. So from those 870, we have had a total of 135 active participants in one session at a time. Again, having that euphemism again, that imagine 10 people in your room right now. Now imagine hosting 135 people right then and there. It's a mammoth task, and as well as it requires a lot of logistics, a lot of resources, a lot of precious amount of effort that we should not be putting it behind bringing people in, but rather getting the information out, getting the knowledge to exchange, getting policy advancements and everything to happen whilst people engage. Next slide, please. One other thing that we always try and identify is that in the development sector, in this sector itself, we see that there's been a bit of a discrimination regarding gender segregation, and as well as trying to have women empowerment in the forefront to cut that climate injustice and as well as injustices that we see. We have identified that platform, we're able to engage with a broader audience, bringing in women as well, and hence why having a good amount of split of 37.5 to 62.5. I do understand it's not 50-50 yet, but through this platform, I believe over the 10 years, in the coming 10 years, we will be able to achieve something similar. Next, please. Now, this is a bit of a heat map of from where have we gotten our participants from and as well as speakers from. Now, if you notice, including Bangladesh, we have been able to penetrate into 55 different countries. Now, imagine the amount of carbon emissions that we have been able to mitigate by not having people travel all the way from, let's say, Africa to Bangladesh to attend a 2-hour session, or having people travel from Bangladesh to whichever country to attend one session that they're having. This allows for that north-south, south-south, and north-north approach as well, where we bring together best practices from all over the world and have them on the same platform talking about the betterment of climate advocacy, climate policy, and as well as climate change. Moving forward, please. Again, since we have the language barrier happen as well as geographical barriers happen, we decided to go into something a bit of a different offshoot here. We tried to understand how many languages or how many people say, how many types of languages do we get in the participation this time around? And we've been able to count 35 plus languages altogether. You see, it's a plus because we are still in the mode of counting. If you realize, running a whole entire conference 24 hours over the span of few days, it's very difficult to crunch the matrix and crunch the numbers and showcase it to them in a very quantitative manner. Moving forward, please. Again, we have engaged over 40 plus participants in development sectors as our panelists, including plus 20 other universities, and as well as 100 plus other NGOs, INGOs, and local institutions. Again, if you notice, one major thing that we realize is having that cross-sectoral, cross-institutional information exchange, knowledge exchange is what we look for and use through this in this platform. And if I could elaborate a little more, I do recall from one of the meetings that I've attended from Dr. Hawk is he mentioned that even if civilizations die off, universities don't. Some of the oldest universities, let's say we take University of Manchester, it's been there since the 1800s. Civilizations have died off since then, but the university stays. Knowledge or educational institutions stays. So we try and engage them as much as possible so we can foster more educational knowledges and as well as further more capacity building, further more barrier breaks. Next, please. And total session, as we mentioned, we tried to do a bit of an experimentation, is a total of 35 sessions altogether and 2 hybrid sessions. We ran the hybrid sessions in tandem along with other online sessions as well. We've had over 25 youth participants come through, young web professionals come through, attend our sessions in person. Not only that, use those information and knowledge that they've gained through the online sessions before the workshop as well, and have them demonstrate through interactive workshops over here and show that there is actually a place for learning through online and offline engagements. But before I proceed, I'd like to give a small shout out to Dharmachandra Da, who has been the core person in this graphics and as well as video and everything here. These are the people that we talk about, but at least gets appreciated. They work behind the scenes, but we don't really talk much about them. I again would like to give a small, large applause for that. Moving forward from there. Now, CO2. One of the major reasons why we have climate change is because of greenhouse gases. One thing that we have tried to go into the learning module for this year is that how much carbon emission have we been able to cut with the participants joining online. We have the metric for people who have joined the sessions. Again, it's a lot of numbers that we're trying to crunch, but this is something that we're looking forward to. Again, this is the 10-year anniversary of Gobeshona platform itself. So we're also trying to go out to you guys after the session to hear back from you. What sort of innovation, what sort of metric, what sort of way of monitoring, evaluation, learning are we trying to impose in the coming 10 years? It's not just what we say goes, but rather a platform with stakeholders who talk and basically have knowledge exchange between them. Next slide, please. Again, online session breakdowns. We have had 78 male participation, 57 female participation, 23 youth, and 4 governmental. These are the overall panelists and as well as speakers who came through in the past 5 days to speak about their research and as well as exchange the best practices that they could come about with. Next, please. And now we go into the photography session, where we have tried something again, interestingly similar, where we've tried taking group photos on the Zoom calls and ask people to, could you go back, please? Ask people back, please. The other direction. Nope. Okay, anyway, so we have tried to bring everyone together by stating, could you turn on your camera so that we could have a small huddle, albeit 8,000 kilometers, 8,024 kilometers away. We could still be on the same plane together. These are from the in-person workshops that we've had. As we see, SIR's one main ethos was having proper capacity building of youth and young researchers. And this is something that we've tried to personify through this conference this year around. Going forward. With that, I'd like to end. Thank you. Takima, over to you.
Thank you, Shoaib, and thank you for the recap of the activities that we've had this year. And again, a round of applause from our side, as well as to all our friends and partners that helped us do the sessions, but also the people that are behind the scenes. I think that was a very good kudos for you to call that on. So again, from our side, as we've talked about, a lot of the issues that we've been trying to unpack on the Gobeshona series, really being able to amplify local voices, really being able to embed learning and research and capacity building as part of the Gobeshona series that we've been able to develop over the last decade or so, and bringing in that local knowledge, understanding from local practitioners, local researchers in all different countries and sectors, what are the really critical issues that they're grappling with, and what are the ways that we might be able to engage better and work together. So I'm very, very honored and delighted to have with us on the panel for our closing for this year's conference a number of our friends and partners from development partners, agencies, from government, from other related think tanks across the globe, joining in from various different time zones. Thank you so much for being here with us, for to hear a little bit about how we may be able to champion the work that you are doing so well in these sorts of platforms, in these sorts of spheres, how we might be able to collaborate better going ahead. And I know a number of us are engaged on a number of activities that are kicking off throughout this year. Gobeshona happening a little bit earlier, but then more activities and more places that we might be able to convene and talk together on different issues and unpack this knowledge and really embed it into local communities. What are the different things that we can look forward to? So with that, I'd like to bring on to our panel. Firstly, we have Mr. Mihir Bhatt, founder and director for the All India Disaster Management Institute, AIDMI. Mihirji, the floor is yours. If you can hand back to me at the end of your remarks, please. Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much. Can you hear me clearly?
Yes, sir. Please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. No, it's been always a pleasure to be part of Gobeshona. All the five of the series that has taken place, and one has learned a lot, benefited a lot. And for that, I thank Salimul Haq Sahab, but also the team that is taking this forward now. So congratulations for the various sessions that you have. I'm going to make remarks on focusing on extreme heat and why we must invest more and why we must invest now. I'm going to do that with AIDMI's own work with a range of partners, including some of you here.
I think we've just lost Mihirji for a brief second there. Perhaps while Mihirji might be reconnecting.
Hello?
Mihirji, are you back?
Can you hear? Yes, can you hear?
Unfortunately, I think he's dropped off there. Hopefully, he's able to reconnect and join with us. Apologies for that, but if maybe we would move on. I'd like to call on to the panel our next guest.
Can you hear me?
Ah,
Hello?
Mihirji, can you hear us?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. So I'll just quickly based on Gobeshona, this to invest more, both a lot of money, but also time and effort in future. So the first area that I would like to mention is rising mortality rates due to extreme heat. We know not enough, but we know about what's happening in urban areas, but we don't know what's happening in rural areas enough as far as rising mortality rate is concerned, especially to agricultural labor, migrant labor, casual labor in those areas. So that's one area where more research money, project money, time, effort are required. The second important area where more work is needed and more investment therefore is needed is strain on the health system. We do know that what are the direct impact of extreme heat on health, and we will be
I'm afraid we've lost Mihir, sir, again.
in the informal sector, both in terms of labor, but also in terms of housing, in terms of livelihoods, in terms of food, water, a whole range of more investment is needed to see what kind of adaptation is possible, what kind of adaptation is already taking place, and how adaptation itself can become a mitigation measure. The fourth area is urban vulnerability. There is very exciting work is being done by a range of organizations around that. Enough about what is
I think Mehiji drop again. So I would request Mehiji, please, you can leave now and rejoin for your stable connectivity.
Apologies for that.
terrible. Our side as well. The fifth area, which is very important, is to look at the agriculture and on systems now. They what we don't have any more is what is in rural areas who are just making by agriculture and affecting them. And especially for cooling efforts, are causing extreme heat.
This being one of the challenges of running a global conference online. Apologies for the technical.
No, I understand. So that was the sixth, which was energy sector. Seventh is the social inequity, and a lot of work, new exciting work is happening around the insurance sector here. And various approaches are being taken: urban, rural, formal, informal, parametric, non-parametric, life insurance, and so that we have a big insurance market, so that we have a better understanding of mitigation measures that we need to do, so the need for insuring becomes less.
Our sincere apologies. I think we keep dropping out with Mihir, so maybe if it'd be better for Mihirji, if you can hear us, to maybe back out and then join again. We can come back to you at the end of the remarks. I think our tech team are working on that one. Sincere apologies, colleagues. If we to our next speaker panelist, Ms. Sheila Patel, founder and director of Society for Promotion of Area Resource Centers, Spark India. Sheila Didi, can you hear us?
Yes, very well. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sheila Didi. The floor is yours. If you could hand back to me at the end of your remarks, please.
Well, I want to start off by paying my respects to my brother and my dearest friend, Salim. He has been a very important person supporting me and all the networks that I am associated with working on informality to make a transition from just working on development challenges to looking at ways by which development and climate work together. And I think that through the process of the Gobeshona conferences that I attended physically.
But what is happening?
Oh dear. What should I do, Saki? Because it's unfair for, I don't think Mihir has got your message and he continues to talk.
Trying to work on the sound on that.
Yeah. So tell me when you want to start, for me to
Sorry,
start.
I think you go ahead.
Okay. So the reason I'm talking about this is that with all the amazing innovations that you're doing, which I'm very proud of you and your team doing it, the fundamental principles that you have derived from the work of Salim Bhai are very important to say. And for me, they represent 3 or 4 very, very important foundational things that I see you doing, but which I want you to push the barriers off and use all the networks and the support structures that emerge from Salim's great generosity of sharing, teaching, learning, to bring together an accountability system that equalizes the right to research, the right of common people, the right of communities of practice to produce the same quality of data, of analysis, of issues and concerns from below that now should meet that which comes from above halfway. Salim and I used to look at those kind of things to say, where do these two meet? And usually, like you said before about consultants coming and flying in and flying out, the same thing is often happening with researchers in our own countries. And therefore, we need to develop a much deeper democratization of research. The other very important thing, which were all in many ways uh, either initiated, supported, but also showcased by Salim and Gobeshona, were these locally led principles for adaptation. I know that May is there and will champion that, but I think that we should do a kind of a litmus test of how many people, because a lot of the signing offs of these processes were done during Gobeshona conferences. So we need to look at how many organizations that are policy making, that are financing, that are serious leaders in various issues, actually fulfill their obligations to the locally led adaptation principles that they have signed on. And I think that themes, every single theme that you have in Gobeshona should hold people accountable to that. Do they do that? How do they do that? The next one is the similar one on the ARA, the Adaptation Research Alliance. That was also something that Salim championed a lot. Uh, it, it gave a lot of incentives for people who were doing grassroots research. And in this, I want to speak on Mihir's behalf that his seminal work on looking at district disaster plans and the showcasing of that and the methodology of doing that, using it to help communities, to help governments, is seminal. And so how can you identify as Gobeshona these amazing, precious strategies of research that is done practically, that has value for very, very vulnerable constituencies, and showcase them more and more and produce engagement with governments and with communities, because what we find is that getting government to participate in this process has become more and more difficult. So how do we do that is a challenge for you. And the last part of what I want to say is that one of the things that Salim made everybody accountable for, you remember when we were at COPS, Salim would start the meeting of the GRP by saying, now everybody tell us what you have been doing. How do you make your work accountable to the constituencies that matter to us? And I think you're following that legacy, you're supporting and promoting those kind of things. Just deepen and strengthen it, get more and more aggregates of people to put that, so that just as you your colleagues talked about all the events and the representations, you also talk about the issues and what kind of expanded following those issues have. Salim spent a lot of time talking about the least developing countries, of providing capacity building methods to support them to have their own voices. Where is that going? Where is all the aid that is supporting those countries, which is not coming through? Who's accountable for that? So I feel that Gobeshona is, as it matures and as it grows, has the potential to bring to people the report card of what's happening. And so, as one of the people who strongly support your work and who see a lot of the things that I do, which is championing the whole issue of bringing in urban informality in the discussions. So just like Mihir said, the rural agricultural sector, people who are landless workers don't get discussed. We have the same thing. So just to end, I would say, sharpen your knife, sharpen your analytics to bring all these qualitative things. And I'm very proud of the work that you are doing. Thank you.
Thank you, Sheila Didi, and very inspiring. And also, thank you for holding us to account for ways that we might be lacking in our impacts, but also ways that we might be able to improve. And we're very, very thankful for a number of the sessions this year that also looked into that accountability issues. And as you mentioned, particularly in some of our LLA sessions, where we were unpacking some of the issues that we were discussing on the principles of LLA, but also on the ways that we are able to engage local communities and local stakeholders in that accountability framework. So again, thank you for inspiring us that Gobeshona could be a platform that we could expand that across the different global sectors to see how that accountability might work out. And then, as you said, report it, use it as a report card to see how climate actions are taking place, how locally led adaptation initiatives are taking root, and then building on our partnerships to see where we can take that going ahead. So thank you so much for that. I'd like to now move on to our next speaker, a friend of ours, Dr. Laura Kuhl, who's the Associate Professor for the School of Public Policy and Urban Affairs and International Affairs program at Northeastern University in the US. Laura, can I hand the mic to you and at the end of your remarks, if you could hand back to me, please.
Sure, and thank you, Saqib, so much for the invitation to join. It's such a pleasure to be here with you all today and to think collectively with you about kind of what Gobeshona has accomplished and where to go from here. And so I just wanted to offer a few reflections, particularly reflecting on kind of what the moment that we're in right now for adaptation and the sort of space for locally led adaptation. And it feels cliche to say that this is a critical moment for climate action because we have missed so many critical moments in the past. But there's no denying that we are in the midst of enormous upheaval, particularly for international cooperation on climate. And while the actions of the United States, including the dismantling of US aid and the disengagement with the Paris Agreement, are the most dramatic indicators of that upheaval and disruption, we are all painfully aware that there are larger processes unfolding that will dramatically reshape climate action, particularly for adaptation in the global South. And so it's in moments like this that forums like Gobeshona are so particularly important. We desperately need creative thinking to envision new pathways forward. And it's in spaces like this which bring together people working, thinking, and visioning in this space that I believe new possibilities can really emerge. The conversations that have happened this week won't alone address the enormous challenges that climate change poses, but I do believe that it's only by coming together, sharing experiences, and building connections that we can begin to envision a more just climate future. So with that in mind, I want to think about kind of what does this moment mean for locally led adaptation? And first of all, let's avoid sugarcoating that this pulling out or pulling back on commitments by the global North is anything but a climate injustice. That said, are there opportunities in this moment for reframing locally led adaptation and enabling a future that really embodies what the principles of LLA are calling on us all to try and achieve. I think I don't have any answers here, but I think that this is a moment that this community can potentially offer some creative thinking for that. So as I speak, I wanted to share a paper led by my colleague and friend, Dr. Faisal Rahman, that I wrote with a number of esteemed colleagues, where we reflected on some of the promises and pitfalls of locally led adaptation. And I don't know if this is possible to share with the audience as well, but I've put it in the chat. And my reflections really build on some of the thinking that we did in this piece. My reflections are also informed by the opportunity I had earlier this year to be hosted by ICCCAD as a visiting researcher, engaged with the locally led adaptation team at ICCCAD, who are doing incredible work pushing the boundaries on what locally led adaptation actually looks like on the ground. So I've seen kind of three narratives emerging in response to the changes in climate finance, in the climate finance landscape over the past few months in particular. And while I think it's important to reflect on the potential that each alternative offers for advancing climate action, I'm also quite concerned about the risks posed by each. And so I want to lay out these concerns in the hopes that collectively this community can be responsive to that. One is a call for philanthropies to step up and fill the gaps left by governments. And I see three concerns with this. One, so far we're not really seeing this happen. We've actually seen some major philanthropies pulling back on their climate commitments in response to political pressure, particularly in the United States. I also see concerns that as this does happen, we know from the past that some of these philanthropies are highly reliant on technical solutions. Many of them have built their wealth out of the tech sector and have an ideological mindset that technological solutions can solve many of the world's problems. And we know that climate challenges are not solely technical challenges. And so I think there's some real questions whether that will emerge. And then finally, big questions for me around what this would mean for governance and accountability, national or local ownership as well. The second sort of narrative that I've seen emerge is an increasing emphasis among donors and climate funds to maximize the efficiency and value for money of limited climate finance. This has long been a challenge in the climate space, and I only see this continuing to become a larger challenge as these sources of funding become sort of more constrained. See increased emphasis for calls for private sector adaptation, bankability, a lower risk tolerance, and a likely emphasis on loans rather than grants. All of these are things that we know are problematic for climate justice and particularly for adaptation and loss and damage. And so I think we need to be aware and continue to hold these sources accountable for ensuring that the limited climate finance that is available continues to promote climate justice. And then the third narrative is around community self-reliance. And this is likely to be where we really see a lot of the action happening, that as kind of donors and governments pull back, that communities will be left to continue to manage adaptation and the impacts of climate change, the losses and damages that they experience on their own. And so I think we really need to, while we can celebrate the local actions that communities are taking, we need to make sure that we are not reinforcing narratives that reify communities at the end, place an extra burden on them for the impacts they're already experiencing. So those are the challenges. What are the opportunities that I see? I think we know that sort of the development in climate finance landscape as it currently exists is very far from perfect. And I think the concept of locally led adaptation really has the potential to fundamentally reshape these relationships. But despite the commitments of donors and organizations, many of whom have made these commitments at Gobeshona to promote locally led adaptation, what this actually looks like in practice is still in its infancy. And so there's three opportunities I want to briefly mention. One is focus on the enabling conditions for locally led adaptation. And here, I want to just give one small example from an organization in Bangladesh. Yesterday, I was in a session we heard from Mohan Kumar, the director of leaders, about the work that they're doing. And I also had the opportunity to join ICCCAD for some fieldwork, speaking with the communities that leaders is working with. And one thing really stood out to me from that fieldwork is the ways that gender empowerment can be an enabler for locally led adaptation, and the long-term work that leaders was doing with communities to build empowerment among the women in the communities that then set the conditions that would enable them to participate in adaptation in the ways that the principles of locally led adaptation suggest. And I give this small example just to say that I think as these principles of locally led adaptation start to be embraced in practice, it could really help to break down some of the dichotomy between development and adaptation that we've seen for such a long time. The next is that this might be a moment that's really important for moving beyond a focus on finance to really acknowledge that locally led adaptation is much more holistic than just finance, and that there's many other places where we can collectively be also focusing. And then finally, that as locally led adaptation is embraced on the ground, this has potential to integrate loss and damage and adaptation in a much more holistic way. And again, this is an area where ICCCAD is doing some really innovative work, and I hope to see that be advancing in the future. So collectively, I think this is a moment where really would like to push for a call to think about what would it look like to decolonize locally led adaptation? How can we re-envision locally led adaptation in ways that fundamentally shift the power dynamics that we've seen playing out in adaptation over decades and in development before that? And I think Gobeshona is absolutely the perfect space to be having that conversation. It is fully the ethos within which Gobeshona was developed, and I hope that that's a call that ICCCAD and the Gobeshona team can take up in the years to come. Thank you so much, and I'll turn it back to you, Sakib.
So much, Laura. Again, just to focus on some of the elements that you mentioned that were very, very critical. Thank you again. So we do hope that this can become a space that we were able to really unpack and have those difficult conversations. I know that the decolonization of the development sector and climate sector at large has been something that has been gaining momentum over the last few years. But hopefully, as we learn and we work with a lot of our partners across the globe, that is something that we might be able to take inspiration and get different perspectives on what are those approaches, how we might be able to do that. And also, as Sheila Didi mentioned, as a researcher, taking that onus to really work with the communities to understand how we can do that sort of unpacking and not be extractive as researchers ourselves, but also what are the ways that we can co-create and work on that. So again, hopefully that in years to come, this space becomes that way for us to be able to unpack and have those conversations, but then also inspire people to take on the challenges that are not being addressed right now with the current paradigms of funding and the way that institutes and things are being financed and agendas are being put on places, but really being able to work on what needs to be addressed, what are the ways that we can improve the quality of life going ahead. So really thank you again to all of our speakers. I'm told by my team that we may be able to quickly try in and see if Mihirji has been able to reconnect. Mihirji, are you with us?
And hear me.
So sorry for the technical difficulties.
Am I audible?
To go ahead. Yes, please go ahead.
No, I just was listening to Shilanji and of course Laura's presentation. I don't know how much of what I said came through. I won't repeat that. I would just say that one of the things that Gobeshona can do and has done, drawing from both, is to focus more on extreme heat and why we must invest more now in locally led adaptation related to extreme heat, especially areas around adaptation to rising mortality rates, adaptation to strain on health system that locally taking place, adaptation to economic losses that's taking place, urban vulnerability, impact on agriculture, especially from the family farms, on energy stress, which is being exacerbated because of extreme heat, and insurance, as I mentioned, and a variety of that, but not necessarily to create an insurance market, but to see that locally led adaptation actually mitigates the need for the insurance that is taking place there. So these are the areas I think more investment is needed. Of course, first of money, but also time, effort, research, and Gobeshona is very well placed to take this further. I look forward to the sixth version of Gobeshona very eagerly and even more successfully. And once again, I remember Salimul Haq Saab, and I congratulate the young team which has taken this further. It is a great pleasure to see this happening in our part of the world. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mihirji. Thank you for your inspiring words, and great to have you be able to join us with a good connection finally. And also, I'd like to plug the little bit of research that Sheila Didi mentioned of your center, AIDMI, working on the Adaptation Research Alliance's work that you have been doing. And we'd be happy to also use that on the platform to share around the knowledge so that others may be able to connect with you. Thank you so much, sir. I'd like to now move on to our next speaker. Our panelist, Mr. Mohammad Ziaul Haq, who's the Director of the Department of Environment from the Government of Bangladesh, who's a negotiator. I believe you're classified as an elder to be able to teach us the negotiations and build the capacity of the next generation. So going ahead, a long-time supporter of our Gobeshona series. Zia, sir, the floor is yours. If you can hand back to me at the end of your remarks, please.
Thank you, Sakib. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Please go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you. Good afternoon. Good evening. At the outset, let me highly congratulate the ICCCAD led by the Sakib and his very able team for organizing this very successful global conference, Global Gobeshona Conference 5, which is very huge task in terms of organizing this 5 days global conference 24/7 in all time zones. So very congratulations to Sakib and his able team. It is my great privilege to be part of the concluding sessions. And I heard from the previous colleagues spoken before me. I fully endorse their viewpoints and the very insightful presentations they have made in terms of different ideas, innovations, and knowledge. I feel that in terms of the outcome of this global conference, since the main objective of the conference is to share and exchange the knowledge, ideas, innovations surrounding the adaptation and other elements of climate change. So I feel that we, as on the part of the government, I see the value of having the insightful outcome and the proposition that will come that has been come out from this global conference. So I'm looking forward to having the proceedings, the report of the conference, so that as we'll keep updating our national adaptation plan in the coming years. So we will try to capture some of the insightful and very innovative ideas that has been put forward by the conference sessions. Actually, I participated in 2 sessions today and yesterday, and that was very useful and very informative. I have found very important recommendations that should be reflected in our updated national adaptation plan. And in doing so, I want to see some written recommendations from the Global Conference 5. And at this opportunity, let me respectfully remember the memory of Dr. Salimul Haq sir. He has started this journey in 2016. And again, congratulations to Sakib to carry forward this important legacy that he has started. He started almost 8 years ago. And I would suggest that in terms of having the collaboration between the researchers, the academicians, as well as the practitioners, I would suggest that try to engage the government sectors, the sectoral ministries and line agencies who have been using your research outputs in their planning process and developing the national plans, programs, and other relevant policy making issues. So I feel that as I am not, I should not get into the insightful discussions that we are having now, but in terms of the getting the benefit from this conference on the part of the government, I see a great value of engaging the government sectors in the sessions. There might be some specific sessions where the government ministry can present their the study, the project-led study, and how they are actually utilizing the study outcomes in their policy making and the project formulation. At the same time, we are having some good lessons learned from the project implementation. So I see that can be presented and shared with the audience across the nations. And in terms of, since we are trying to put emphasis on the locally led adaptation, in that case, I fully appreciate what the previous speaker has spoken, particularly Silaji, Mihirji, and the Laura and others. But I see that when we talk about the locally led adaptation, it has to be obviously locally led, locally practiced, and it will have the social acceptation, local acceptation, acceptability. At the same time, it should not have any negative impacts on the society surrounding physical and living environment. And it will obviously optimize the resources that we have in our hands. So obviously, as Laura has pointed out rightfully, that we need to think further in terms of how to decolonizing the concepts of adaptation at national level and local level, how to make this locally led or the adaptation measures more transformative and more effective and impactful. So at the end, let me again congratulate the team, the ICCCAD team, that you have been successfully carrying forward the legacy of Dr. Salimul Haq, sir, in your endeavor to carry on this huge task. I have seen more than 870 participants already participated in the proceedings. So this is a huge task. I understand that. So again, congratulations to you and your team. And I feel that in terms of government involvement, government sector involvement, we will have the good opportunity in Gobeshona 6, Global Gobeshona 6 conference, where the government sector can directly participate in your proceedings. Thank you very much. And it is again my great privilege to be part of this concluding session. And thank you, the colleagues who have spoken before me, for your insightful presentations and deliberation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Zia, sir. It's always inspiring. I'm very grateful for your support over the years, as well as continued for the ways that we are able to really bring
So,
in.
Sakib, if you allow me, I have just one point to add on. Since you have mentioned that I happen to be participating in the climate change negotiations, so in that case, one point that I would like to share with the colleagues, that whatever we are discussing under this Gobeshona conference, it is very much relevant to the negotiations that is going on under the UNFCCC, particularly when we are trying to finalize the global goal on adaptation and corresponding targets and indicators. Then this useful deliberation from this conference can feed into the discussions of our global goal adaptation. And I feel that since we are trying to finalize the global matrix with indicators and targets, so some very useful information that have been come out from this conference can be discussed in our upcoming global goal adaptation. The workshops. Still, there would be 3 or 4 technical workshops will take place from now and the COP 30. So in between, we will try to put forward some of the good lessons that you have learned from this conference in this formal setting under the Climate Change Convention negotiations. So it is obviously a great value of putting them forward into the COP decision-making process. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Zia, sir. And both for the national governments as well as the international negotiations, thank you for highlighting the importance and linkages that we might be able to make from some of the learnings that we're getting through the conference platform. Indeed, a number of our sessions did look into what are the different ways that we might be able to engage more technically at the global level through the UNFCCC processes, but also through several other conventions and summits that look at policymaking at the international forums at the regional levels, but then definitely also using this local knowledge to inform our national plans. And thank you again for the long time support from the government of Bangladesh in being able to help us in being able to deliver those local voices and inform the national adaptation plans. And certainly we hope that the proceedings from this year's, as well as a lot of the work of our partners across the globe, can really help us to shape the Bangladesh national adaptation plan into becoming very more transformative, much more locally led. What are the different ways we might be able to do that, and learning from other countries on how they're taking that task at hand. Thank you, sir. So I'd like to now move on to our next speaker, Ms. Naoka Martinez Backstrom, who's the first Secretary of Environment and Climate Change and Deputy Head for the Development Cooperation Section for the Embassy of Sweden. Naoka, if I could ask you to come online, and if you could hand back to me at the end of your remarks, please.
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yes, please go ahead.
Yes. Okay. I'll apologize now in advance in case one of my kids just walk in and, disrupt. It's that time of day. Sorry. Yeah. I mean, what can I share? What can I reflect on? I work for the Embassy of Sweden, and we are a partner to the government of Bangladesh. And I'm responsible for the environment and climate cooperation. So my perspective is as a development partner, not a donor, a development partner to the government and to civil society actors to sort of like strengthen and facilitate effective climate action for a country like Bangladesh, where the needs for adaptation is very high. So what I want to say is that there are many processes, many of them government-led, where I see that this network of researchers and think tanks and capacity building institutions that Gobeshona nurtures can actually engage in, yeah, and give a lot of benefit to, and give a lot of offers to even. It's also a demand from us development partners that given, I mean, it has been alluded to here, the limited financing and resources, but I wouldn't put it as like limited. I would say the need to unlock other sources of financing. So we speak a lot about effective climate financing, which is a type of financing that engages, let's say, private sector and all that. But nevertheless, what I wanted to give as an example is where the meeting that I just came from, and which is to discuss the updating of the NDC for Bangladesh. Is going through an NDC updating process, right? It's happening in many other countries because many countries have committed to have missed the February deadline and are going to submit their updated NDCs. Sorry. Can you please They're submitting their updated NDCs by September. Now, what did we see as like important to address in this discussion on updating the NDC of Bangladesh, where we had line ministries, but also ministries like foreign affairs and finance and what have you, and we had a lot of these energy authorities. Etc. What did we see that was lacking where we could have much input from like think tanks and research institutes? This is one, how to strengthen or provide even more directed inputs into the NDC process to secure that the NDC delivers social transformation results as well, not just economic and not just counting how many renewable energy projects you have and all that and how much emissions you reduce, but actually seeing where the health and the education and other social issues can be a part of this package that is called the NDC. And here we also saw that we need to work better in integrating adaptation goals into the NDCs, right? And this is where we we also realized that if we had a network of very engaged research institutions, they could actually provide the resources that the government would need to make this NDC process of updating and implementation more effective and more efficient for Bangladesh. So some of the key issues that came out was we need frameworks to establish effective governance, for instance. We need to see what it means to achieve a whole of society approach for the NDCs and the NAP. So what does that mean for adaptation, and how could we use the LLA framework for this process? How do we mainstream gender equality and youth participation in all this big uh, um, sort of like climate action areas? And how do we have coordination mechanisms where there is very strong representation from civil society, so that the issue of like a just transition is actually addressed and practiced? So I think in the future we could benefit, and I like the suggestion of Mr. Huck. There could be more engagement with government practitioners, policymakers, because they can also like provide a picture of what the challenge is. It's very easy for us in the civil society or development. How do you say? We as development partners or civil society actors to just put a lot of the pressure on government without really understanding what constrains them, why is it difficult for them to actually communicate the need to make the policies happen for people. Would push for having more government engagement so that we could discuss how this Paris Agreement frameworks could is actually being effectively implemented in different contexts. So we could discuss, for example, how data and baselines are being established in different countries. For example, what kind of assessments and evaluations being produced by research organizations could actually be used to sort of like reinforce or affirm or maybe question some of the targets that NDCs would have. We could also be able to pull together a number of the capacity building and knowledge tools that is available there, because the government will not go around like looking for that themselves. You have to be able to package it and then make it accessible for them. They have so much other things to do as well. And then, of course, this network is a network for mobilization, right? So this network mobilizes universities, it mobilizes researchers. So it's good to present this Gobeshona network as a resource for the government as well, for those that are leading a lot of this climate policies and strategies. And then this whole issue about what it means to have bankable projects that actually have an impact on the ground. These are issues that I think we could discuss more. And my final point is, of course, there could be more conversations about building the leadership of youth, using the kind of research being produced by the network members of Gobeshona. So teaching youth how to use latest research and all that to make certain arguments towards policymakers, towards investors of for more social enterprise to build up their capacity to be actors like we have in Bangladesh now, to use the space that is offered to young people here in Bangladesh. So that is it from my end. Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you, Nayoka, for a lot of the inspiration and as well as mentioning some of the ways that we might be able to collaborate better and build on the experiences that we've had. As we mentioned, if you've seen some of my colleagues' presentations, that we have tried to give a little bit of a metric. So I'm glad to say that the youth is already a category that we have been trying to track. But if you will notice, again, going back through the recording, that some of the development partners are areas that we possibly need to be able to develop our collaborations and networks better. But it's great to have you from the Embassy of Sweden based in Bangladesh, where, as you quite rightly mentioned, that this is also a whole of society approach. So again, with the partnerships that we have with our development partners, really looking at what are the different ways that we might be able to engage in country, but then also using these experiences and platforms like this to get those global messages and take them to the negotiations, as well as Yasser mentioned, what are the different ways that we might be able to advocate for some of these issues, particularly at the global stages. And using the networks and friendships that we have from development partners is really one of the ways that I think we'd be able to take some of these learnings, package them in the way that you mentioned, in the different ways that we need to be able to make those submissions, make those interventions, but also being able to take them across to all the development partners where the decisions are made. So again, being able to inform the people, use this as a knowledge space, and we hope that Gobeshona platform becomes that, as much as the next thing that I will be alluding to through our friend and guest, Ms. May Tazin Aung, the Senior Researcher for Climate Finance at the International Institute for Environment and Development, IIED, based in London, to tell us about what to look forward to next from the Gobeshona series and in some of the other partnerships that we have. So May, if I could ask you to give your remarks and hand back to me at the end of that, please.
Great, thank you so much. I do love being the last speaker because then I get to quote all the other great speakers that have gone before me. So before talking about the learning journey, I wanted to remind everyone of the quote that Sheila quoted from Salim, which says, "What have you been doing?" And the learning journey is really about learning from each other and holding each other to account of what we have been doing to advance LLA. And as Laura mentioned before, we are in times of upheaval and uncertainty. And so having a community that is able to hold each other to account, but also be supportive and have a community of trusting relationships is more important now than ever. So in the learning journey, Salim and Claire Shakir, the previous director of the climate change group at IED, wanted to have a series of events from 2021, 10 years from there, to really bring together people who are practitioners of LLA and have something to share. And so I really want to call to action again the accountability piece of the community of practice. We must hold each other accountable, be gentle and kind in holding each other accountable. And Gobeshona, the community-based adaptation conference that IED organizes, that brings practitioners of LLA together, COP and Development and Climate Days, are places where we can really hold each other to account. And what I'd really like to highlight is the importance not just of peer-to-peer learning, where we learn, where communities learn from each others, where philanthropies learn from each other, but across peer groups as well. A couple of speakers ago, the role of government was really highlighted. So we need to engage more unusual actors in this LLA community of practice because they are doing LLA already. So we need to bring together peer groups as well as learn across peer groups as part of the learning journey, with the intention, not forgetting, of holding each other to account. And so the next learning event for us after Gobeshona, this is the first in the learning journey, is the community-based adaptation conference, which will be the 19th of which will be in Recife in Brazil this year. And the tickets are sold out, but we will be sharing key messages, broadcasting the plenary session. So we do encourage you all to tune in and hold each other to account of carrying forward the messages that have come from Gobeshona. Thanks. Back to you, Sakib.
Thank you, man. I'm delighted to hear that the upcoming series for CPA 19 are already sold out, but there will be plenaries that will be broadcasted online. A number of our community that have been following us in the Gobeshona series are also avid CBA followers. So it's great to hear that we'll be able to continue on being able to use this as our part of the learning journey as we see, but also good to see that there is a growing audience that is also doing that, following from one to the other, building on the learnings that they're doing here and working on the other series as we're going, and being able to shape and take that conversation forward. So thank you, May, for that update on the conference coming up. And so with that, I would like to thank all of our team, all of our participants, all of our speakers that have been with us this year. Special thanks to all the people that have been working all night long for the last few days and the few months building up into this conference. It has been particularly challenging this year, but we're very, very grateful for all the support and all the support of everybody in our office here at ICCCAD, as well as our partners working tirelessly to make sure that we're able to get in all the technical sessions, all the technical speakers, all the panelists, and all the participants that we have been through this year, and hopefully we're able to do so with the recordings, as they're all recorded and saved online, so we're able to share that learning for time to come. So again, a round of applause from our side to everybody for a lot of their back-end support, front-end support, and not being able to be online, but being with us in spirit. Thank you so much. And with that, I'd like to conclude the fifth global conference. Just before we leave, could I ask all the panelists just to maybe turn on their camera for one last time? Maybe we just take a quick group photo before we close the recording. Thank you to all in the audience. Thank you so much. And photo. 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 Yeah, spotlight photo. Okay, there we go. Camera. This camera. The last one is that. I think that's it. Thank you all. Thank you. I think we'll be shutting off the recording of the call, but thank you all for staying till quite late at our time, quite early in other times. Thank you, everybody. We'll be following up with you after everybody has had a weekend to relax.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.